Okay, I think we're going to go ahead and get started. So if everyone could settle down, please. Okay, I'd like to thank the Psychonomic Society for sponsoring this workshop. I'd like to thank our presenters for presenting today. I'd like to thank all of you for offering your lunch break and jeopardizing your reputation as a dedicated academic scientist to come here. Be seen without sunglasses and a trench coat and all that. So the agenda for today is I'm going to give you a crash course. This is my own perspective on how to transition in industry. Crash course 101 on non-academic careers. And then we'll have each of the panelists give a brief vignette about how they got to where they are today and what it is that they do. And then we'll have a 1 hour question and answer session to give you an opportunity to ask questions of all the panelists. In the non-academic careers 101, I'll cover topics such as what's the non-academic landscape, just to help you have some categories on which to hang the different types of jobs that are out there, how to go about your job search, what obstacles you might face, some pointers on your resume. I think the most crucial factor, and I think Todd has something in that too, the timing of your application. People always overlook that. Some interviewing tips. And then what does it mean to do research and publish in the private sector? And I'm going to do this in a ludicrous speed because I only have 15 minutes. Have you seen Spaceball? Spaceball's ludicrous speed? That's going to be me? Okay. So the non-academic landscape, in my mind, divides into agency side and client side. And it's pretty simple. The client side offers products, services, and they occasionally buy services from the agency side, which sells services back to the client side. And those services might be usability testing or user experience design, research, that sort of thing. I'm not committed to one side or the other, so when I'm putting up pros and cons, it's completely value neutral. This is an entirely personal decision for you, which one suits your temperament better. On the agency side, you prove your value through your utilized time, which is the percentage of time that you're billable, because the agency only exists by selling its services to the client side. So the only way you can prove your any worth to the agency is by constantly billing out your time to the client side. At the client side, the assumption that your contributing value is built into your position. We need a researcher and user experience, and then we're going to fill that position. But the company decides first, we need to have this position because it's important to our organization, and now we're going to staff it. So the assumption that your contributing value is already built into your position. You don't have to prove it constantly by being billable all the time. The agency side, your work is client-driven, so you do nothing but provide services. You basically sit there and wait for someone to approach you and say, can you do X for me? And then you go. On the client side, your products are portfolio-driven, so if your company manufactures video games, that's what you do. If your company manufactures spreadsheet applications, that's what you do. On the agency side, you're never quite sure what company is going to approach you to help you with whatever service or product they provide. On the agency side, you have multiple clients, because again, you sit there and you just wait for people to approach you and say, can you do X for me? On the client side, you have a single internal client, so if you work for Microsoft, that's your client. You do work for Microsoft. On the agency side, one of the pros, I think, is you have very varied and diverse work because you never know. It's like Forrest Gump, laughs like a box of chocolates. You never know what you're going to get. It's like that. So you just sit there and you wait for companies to approach you, and they could be, in my case, gasoline manufacturers. They could be medical device manufacturers. They could be online marketers. You never know. On the client side, you have long-term continuity. If you're working for Microsoft Office, you're going to be working on Microsoft Office, release 2.0, release 3.0, release 4.0, and so forth. On the agency side, you might have erratic hours. There's sometimes where you're completely slammed, and sometimes where you're just sitting there and looking at your screensaver with the fish being eaten. Client side is more of a stable, I don't want to call it 9 to 5, but yeah, you know what's going to happen when, you know what your release dates are, you know what you need to do to get to those release dates. On the agency side, there may be extensive travel. I've repeatedly turned down positions with 100% travel, which means you're out of the office Monday through Friday somewhere else, and then you're back home Saturday, Sunday. Next Monday, you're back out traveling. On the client side, there may be minimal travel. Of course, there are exceptions to all of this. On the agency side, you're deadline driven. So the adage that poor planning on your part does not constitute an emergency on mine does not hold at all on the agency side. Absolutely, your client's poor planning is an emergency on your side. On the client side, you of course have visibility into the deadlines because you know when Windows 2014 is going to come out. Well, let me guess, 2014. So no surprise there. Here are just some examples of agency side and client side companies. You have the digital design agencies like Huge, Frog, Razorship, IDEO on the agency side, and then companies like Apple, Google, Microsoft who all manufacture and sell products on the other side. And then there's some hybrids where companies have their own research organizations, their own agencies. I worked for one of those, for example, Siemens Corporate Research, which was officially part of Siemens, but it was a self-contained consulting agency where you had to sell your services constantly to all sorts of Siemens companies. Where you find these jobs, I find a good resource is LinkedIn, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about LinkedIn. I can't stress enough the importance of LinkedIn in the private sector. Did I mention LinkedIn? Okay. LinkedIn, apart from this fabulous job search function, also has groups that you can join, and these groups mail out digests on a weekly or a daily basis, whatever you choose. And I've got a laser pointer. And little known to some people, these digests also have job offerings, and the advantage of that is you can click on this, it gives you the job offering, and it shows you who posted it. So immediately you have access to the person who's recruiting for this position. What better thing to have than that? And you can email that person directly through LinkedIn. And that person, when you email that person through LinkedIn, immediately in return has access to your profile, which is basically your online resume. Indeed.com is another great source. Works kind of like Google. It's very simple. Just what do you want to be doing and where do you want to be doing it? And you get your results. Since I put this presentation together, I found that Glassdoors.com, which I'll also be talking about, is another great source for jobs. What do you search for? Psychology? Nah, nope. You might search for human factors, but I'm finding that those positions are few and far between, and they're kind of very hardcore technical, like designing ergonomics of instrument panels for airplanes. I think there are more jobs to be found if you search for things like user experience. That's really where it's at right now. These are all buzzwords, and they're going to change from time to time, but right now I'm finding user experience or UX is a good place to be. You can also search for usability. You'll be running usability tests if you search for that. User research, that's kind of more anthropological type research, ethnography, user experience research, marketing, consumer insights. Let's say you found an ad that appeals to you. This one I pulled off of LinkedIn for usability researcher. In my experience, the people recruiting for these positions are very literal. They do not think outside the box. So you need to convince them that you're the peg that's round enough to fit in the round hole and not too square for that round hole. So what do? You go through this, you go through the qualifications. Let's see, bachelor's in social cognitive or behavioral experimental psychology, and you'll find that for a lot of these, the minimum requirement is a bachelor's. So already you can sense you're kind of a little overqualified for a lot of these. So you have some convincing to do that you're not really that Ferrari to go grocery shopping. But this one, yep, got that, yep. Experience designing and running original experimental research. Gee, I don't know. Do we have experience doing that? I think so. Okay, so that's a check. But now, experience delivering usability data to influence interaction, visual, and motion design. What? This does not sound familiar. Desired skills, doing usability studies on Windows, phone, or other mobile is required. Okay, so this is where the major hang-up is going to be. Like I said, these HR people or recruiters, very narrow-minded. Have you done Windows research? No. Oh, okay, you're out. I get this a lot. Aren't you a little academic? I still get that. I spent 9 years in the private sector, 4 years postgraduate in academia. Aren't you a little academic? So here's a sad fact. You're at the same time ridiculously overqualified. You're that Ferrari to go grocery shopping. And at the same time, you're desperately underqualified from the perspective of someone who's very narrow-minded. So here's the reality of your situation. You're a world-class researcher. That's awesome. Are they looking for that? Not really. This is really what they want. You have rules of experience in usability testing. Have you done that? Afraid not. So that's a little bit of what you're facing. It really is a catch-22, and it's tragic. How do you get experience doing usability research when no one will hire you, and no one will hire you when you haven't done usability research? So let's see, you can do a few things. One thing I would definitely recommend is, I can just look at my screen. One thing I would definitely recommend is tailoring your resume to each specific job one-to-one. I can't stress that enough. You take the job posting as a template, and if they're looking for usability research, you mention usability research somewhere in your resume. Kind of a no-brainer. So say you have your job posting here and your resume here. If they're looking for a BS in cognitive psychology, make sure it says cognitive psychology, not experimental, not whatever, not just psychology, cognitive psychology, very literal. If they're looking for a certain qualification, like experience designing, running original experimental research, make sure that your research bears that out. And whatever it says over here, make sure this bears it out. Spin relevant experience, which means, what did I say? Oh, well, that wasn't the response to spin your relevant experience, but make sure you describe your relevant experience in such a way that it seems palatable to the person reviewing your resume. I'm not joking about potentially admitting your PhD and eventually admitting your publications. I have a resume and then I have an addendum, and I got into trouble because the pagination of my resume ran continuously through my addendum with my publications departmental services. Well, if it's really separate, then why did you number it continuously? Got me there. Oops. And that again made me appear too academic. Okay. Apart from your resume, it's good to have a web representation. My LinkedIn profile shown here is actually in the top 5% of viewed LinkedIn profiles on LinkedIn. This has gotten me inquiries from Yahoo, IBM, Microsoft twice, Rackspace, Facebook, list goes on and on. So pretty important. Why do you want a LinkedIn profile? Well, this is a visualization of my LinkedIn network. It's pretty extensive. If you're looking for a job in, say, the orange area, this is one of my contacts. I'm directly linked to that contact. That contact reaches well into the orange space and also into the green space. So if I'm looking for a job, I hit up this guy. And of course, all of his 2 million contacts. Timing, I can't stress this enough. I have currently on my computer an application for a position I've opened now, someone who graduates in June 2014. Doesn't do me much good. So here's the reality of it. Say this date is when the company posts a position. That means the company really wanted it filled much earlier. Why did they want it filled much earlier? Well, because they could have known they needed it filled even earlier than that. But were they thinking ahead? No. Oops, someone quit. Oops, we have this capacity that we need to fill. Quick, let's react. Knee-jerk reaction. Let's say you apply here and you do pretty well. And a week is pretty brief, by the way. Interview process can take weeks or months. I had one interview, well, I shouldn't call it one interview. I had one interview process where I went through for 11 interviews, a teleconference, and a written test. So you did pretty well. You received the offer. Problem is, you're available down here. What's the company going to do? Hire someone here because they needed the position filled here, and they knew they needed it filled here. So why would they wait until they're available that much later? Make sure your timing is good. The interview itself, learn the jargon. I mean, if someone came into you and presented him or herself as a perceptual psychologist and was like, I don't know what a receptive field is, that probably wouldn't look good, okay? So translate that into the industry sphere. If you don't know what some of this stuff is, it doesn't lend a whole lot of credibility to your application, because already it's a stretch where you haven't done the Windows, mobile platform usability testing, so you're already a little out of your water there, and then if you don't know this stuff, it makes it even less credible. Hone your business acumen. Just make sure you come across as a business-savvy person. Dress appropriately, and by that I don't just mean wear a tie and a suit in case of guys. We rejected one applicant because he came in an interview in a slacks, button-down shirt, and a tie. Where was the jacket? Did he not want the job enough to even go out and buy a jacket if he didn't own one? These can't be serious about this position. What I mean about dress appropriately is do some research about the company, its culture, what's expected. I've been questioned about my attire at job interviews. Why did you wear this outfit? Oh, well, I know it's a consulting business, so I wanted to look respectable and serious, so the suit. But I know it's also a user experience design position, so I had something a little playful for my tie, but not too playful, because I know it's an IT business consulting environment, but a little playful because it's user experience design. Okay, impressive, good. Prepare questions. There's nothing worse than if you're interviewing someone and you ask them, well, do you have any questions to me about this company? You're desiring to work. I mean, imagine you're on a date and like, do you want to know anything about me? No, not really. Really, the whole thing, picture it like a courtship, really, in every aspect. Be prepared for questions. So run some of the questions you might get through your head. Talk to people you know who work for the company, what's important to them. Just be prepared so you don't draw a blank on a crucial question. I won't lie, some of the interviews are tough. Here's a list that's drawn up every year of the 25 most difficult companies to interview for, because these companies will not just ask you questions in your domain of expertise or questions related to the job content. These are some actual questions. Can you estimate the revenue from the 2012 Olympic ticket sales? How many people are watching YouTube in a given hour? How many hotels are there in New York City? The idea is not that you have an answer, but that you don't guess and you don't go, I don't know, but you start reasoning it out. Well, there are 11 avenues and 250 streets, so that gives you X number of intersections. You could be dead wrong. They just want to see how you think on your feet. Here's some questions I've gotten personally. How do you deal with someone who's hostile and there is no recourse to upper management? What is your favorite book and why? Totally related to the job. How do you measure the ROI of UX? And again, here you can see the acumen and the terminology, jargon comes in handy. Why would you want to switch? Looking back now, I can't say that I made the right decision, but I also can't say that I made a wrong decision. Grass is always greener on the other side, so looking across the fence, it always seems more attractive on the other side. Have legitimate, valid reasons for wanting to switch. Of course, now I live in an environment that looks like this, which is why I'm a little cold here. It's 90 degrees where I came from. Salaries, is that a good reason to switch? I don't know. I mean, you be the judge. It's your personal decision, sure. If you're curious about what people make in the industry, Glassdoor.com is a great site. It's also a good site to get reviews, what it's like to work for a company. But bear in mind that just like teacher evaluations, you're going to get your A+ and your F students pretty much submitting evaluations here. So take these all with a grain of salt. Here's some examples of what people at Facebook make. These don't look bad. Basically like a tenured, seasoned faculty somewhere. Research and publications, if those are important to you, that's the first thing I go through with applicants for people who apply for positions in my company. Do you love the research? Do you love publishing? Don't come here. Research needs to deliver value to the company. If it's just cool or, even if it's nature worthy or Nobel Prize worthy, the company's not going to care. Does it make us money? That's what they care about. So you need to add value. And that can change. We had someone we sponsored at Siemens for a PhD in diabetes management, and she was doing a PhD. And mid through her PhD research, the company told her, we're no longer interested in that. Oh, a little bit of freak out there. Research is tactical and portfolio or product oriented. Of course, if you're putting out spreadsheets, they're not going to care that you're doing research on diabetes management, for example, right? No brainer. Research can mean a lot of things in the private sector, not necessarily what you think of when you think of research. Research can be usability testing. I don't know how that's research, but when people in industry talk about research, it can include, what do you think about this laptop? Should the buttons be bigger? Could include contextual inquiry, workflow analyses, et cetera. So not necessarily what you think of when you think of research. Publications are typically for conference proceedings, so you're not trying to get into the psych science type journals. These are, you pretty much submit and you get in, almost. Publications may be suppressed, so you're working in an environment where that's confidential and proprietary, and you find out something that's really gives the company a cutting edge over the competition. That's not going to get published. publications are tactical and utilitarian, so they're never to put science out there. They're always to attract business to the company. The paradox in the private sector is research and publications are often performance metrics. So I have, for example, my performance goals, I have published 2 papers this year. But at the same time, because I'm judged by the percentage of my time that's billable, remember agency side, UT, proving your worth through being billable, it has to come out of my productive time. That's not good. Why would the company want me to, instead of billing time to a client where we generate revenue, publish a paper? Why would they want me to do that? So that's going to come out of either your productive time or your private time. Okay, sorry, that was all ludicrous speed. I hope you got most of that. Let's turn now to the panelist vignettes. And first panelist up is Todd Horowitz, who I think needs no introduction. I think we've all missed targets with Todd. And then next up is Rachel Ensler, who works in marketing, which is also a very viable field, and I think a very interesting field for someone with our background to go into. And then last up, you get to hear from me again, and what it is I do. And I brought some brochures, by the way, in case I didn't totally turn you off, and don't turn you off with explaining what it is we do at my company. And with that, I'll just yield to Todd. Pull this out. Maybe. Do you have any document?
Yes, I have.
Oh, good.
Helps if I plug it in. That looks good.
Where's the usability expert when you need one? Anyone experience usability?
It's funny, but I actually mean it. I mean it seriously, because one lesson that I've learned since I shifted over to the government side is that everybody that I work with really does want to help and make a difference and make things actually better for their fellow citizens. So that's I would like to turn this from a joke into a little more of a slogan. So I rewrote my talk here while watching Robert talk. So the landscape of, I think I would endorse about 90% of what Robert said about the private sector also applies to government work. Some of it really does not apply. This stuff about the company making decisions very quickly, that doesn't happen in the government. I'll get to that later. But in terms of the framework that Robert proposed, it's a lot more like the client side, I think, than it is like the agency side. Certainly, the government does have very good job security. Once you get a government job, it's civil service, and assuming that your agency continues to exist, it is likely that you will continue to have a job, and it comes with fit. The salaries are not great, but they're sort of comparable to academia. The benefits are pretty good, and if you want, it can be a 9 to 5 job. Of course, if you're coming from academia, you might have a little more drive to turn it into something else, and it's what you make of it. And to get back to my title, I think one of the things that drove me to switch to working at the National Cancer Institute is the opportunity to actually make a difference. You can actually get something done. You are in some small way helping to change government policy for the better, driving it by your research, at least in the kind of job I'm talking about. And that is a powerful incentive. On the other side, it's the government, and you have to deal with, well, I put politics down here. For example, many of you might be aware that I couldn't actually do my job for 2 weeks this year for various reasons. and literally I was not allowed to do my job. Like I couldn't even check my email. But there are there's like more subtler politics going on in that the priorities of your agency are not necessarily in your control. And what I didn't add was bureaucracy. Most of the time I'm not aware of government bureaucracy, but every once in a while I'm reminded that I do work for the government. For example, if I want to go to a conference, I have to tell them about 6 months in advance that I'm going to go to this conference, and then it goes through a long approvals chain, and then about a week before the conference they tell me I can go. At which point, all of the early registration benefits are gone, and all of the good hotels have already been booked, and so forth. So there is bureaucracy. In my particular position, I'm lucky to be insulated from it some of the time, but you do have to be able to deal with that. Let me switch gears a little bit and give you a brief sketch of how I got where I am. So I went to grad school some time ago, and then I did a 5-year postdoc at Brigham and Women's Hospital and Harvard Medical School, and then I moved on up to the faculty there for 17 years, and I had a reasonably productive academic career. And then I ran out of grant money, and I thought, well, what am I going to do with myself? And just at that point, an ad crossed my desk for somebody that the National Cancer Institute was looking for someone with expertise in visual perception and attention, and that was sort of like that was a sign from above. Ads like that do not come across my desk every day, and so I contacted the person who posted the ad, and it sounded like a really interesting opportunity, which it has turned out to be a really great opportunity. And so I'm now a program director, which sounds grander than it is. There's not any actual program that I direct, but I'll explain to you what I do. But it's a nice sounding title. I don't know if I'm going to stay there permanently, but at the moment it's a great job. I'm really enjoying myself. Politics aside, it's really been very fulfilling. So at this point, many of you might be asking yourself, well, what the heck? Oh, I want to skip that one. What the heck does the National Cancer Institute need with a psychologist, particularly someone who studies visual perception and attention? I mean, you're not going to cure cancer with that, are you? No, you're not going to cure cancer. I'm not working to cure cancer. So I thought I'd just show you the sort of like the department, the hierarchical structure, and where I am in that structure, and that sort of explains why they're interested in me and what I can bring to cancer, well, to dealing with cancer. So at the top, we're in the federal government. We're in the Department of Health and Human Services. So these are the people who are at the moment most famous for the Obamacare website. But we're in the National Institutes of Health, not responsible for the website. And there are, I forget at this, I think maybe 35 institutes and centers. They call them ICs. We have our own. Robert talked about jargon. We have a whole bunch of jargon of our own, and some of it overlaps with psychological jargon, which is very confusing. So your institutes, the NCI is an IC, an institute or center. So we're in the Cancer Institute, which is the largest of the institutes. It has the biggest budget and the most employees. And so it's divided into a whole bunch of different divisions. And we're in the Division of Cancer Control and Population Sciences. So now this is going to start to come into focus a little bit. They're interested in not curing cancer, but controlling cancer, studying how people get cancer. Epidemiology is a big part of DCCPS. Again with the acronym. So epidemiology, but also figuring out what behaviors lead people to get cancer and so forth. Screening comes under DCCPS and so forth. I mentioned behavior. There is, in fact, a very large program on behavioral research in the National Cancer Institute under DCCPS. It's the largest center for behavioral research at the National Institutes of Health. And so they're studying things like how to get people to quit smoking, because in the United States Huge cause of lung cancer is smoking. We study things like obesity and exercise and diet because you want to know why people get cancer. A huge predictor of getting of cancer is what they call metabolic syndrome, or colloquially being massively overweight. And so there are a lot of behaviors which lead you to get cancer. There are behaviors like going and getting screened at the appropriate time, which can help reduce the burden of cancer. And that's our mission. Not cure cancer, reduce the burden of cancer. Within the behavioral research program, there are a bunch of different branches. There's a tobacco research branch. There's one that studies processes of delivering health care and so forth. I'm in the Basic Biobehavioral and Psychological Sciences branch, BBPSB. And like the name says, we are interested in basic research in psychology and related areas that is relevant to all these sorts of topics in cancer control. So now you can sort of understand why why I work at the Cancer Institute, because I have some expertise in basic research which might be relevant to controlling cancer. Things like how do you read a mammogram, and if you come to my talk at 1:30, you'll hear about the study of the effects of chemotherapy on cognition. Just to give you some more organizational context, a lot of people who've heard that I've moved to NIH, to NCI, are a little confused as to what I'm doing there. There are basically two kinds of jobs you could have at NIH, broadly speaking. There's the intramural and the extramural. And so intramural refers to people who have a lab at NIH. And so that is much like being in an academic department, a psychology department, or a neuroscience department. You've got a lab, you have a certain budget, and you get graduate students, and there's something equivalent to the tenure process and so forth. And basically you're just like an academic, but maybe you have a little better job security. Well, academics have pretty good job security. It's very much like an academic job, except you don't have a lot of teaching. I'm on the extramural side. So the extramural side is the people who deal with grants, handing out grants to people like you or your mentors or whoever. A lot of research that gets done at universities and some small businesses, we give them grants to do research we think is good. Somebody has to figure out what research these people should be doing. That is called program development, and that's something of what we do. Somebody has to be able to, when you write your grant report, somebody has to have scientific expertise to read the grant report and understand what the heck you're doing. That's part of the extramural job. I'll get to that in a couple more slides. What is it like? Well, it's not like having a university job, but exactly what it's like is going to vary widely across institutes at the NIH and across different government departments. So I'm primarily telling you about my experience because that's what I know. But there are research opportunities all across the government. Various branches of the Defense Department do research. CDC does research. There are a whole bunch of opportunities. And the kind of corporate culture, if you will, varies greatly across all of these different settings. It varies across the NIH. I have colleagues who just do grants administration. Some of them like that, some of them don't. It varies across divisions within the Cancer Institute. In the behavioral research program, our director is a guy named Bob Croyle, who's a social psychologist, who worked in academia for many years before coming to the government. And he really promotes a sort of hybrid culture in the behavioral research program. So we do grants administration because somebody's got to do it, and that is part of our mission. But there's also a sort of pseudo-academic culture there, a culture of that values research and publication and collaboration and so forth. But I can't guarantee that if you apply for a job in at the Eye Institute or somewhere else in the government, that you're going to have that kind of experience. It varies greatly, and you're going to have to talk to people and find out what it's like. So who do I work with? Not cognitive psychologists. I am the cognitive guy in, as far as I can tell, the entire behavioral research program. So, which leads to some funny situations. A colleague came into my office a couple weeks ago asking me for advice about some neurological condition with her child, because, you know, I do neuroscience. So most of the people I work with are involved in some way in behavioral medicine. There are tons of social psychologists around. My closest and best colleague is a former clinical psychologist, and we have really great synergy across these disciplines. So you really get it's one contrast to being in an academic department where you're basically mostly hanging out with people who do the same kind of thing that you do, is you get to brush up against all sorts of people who do things that are very different from what you do, and you start to learn about these sorts of things. So it's been very enjoyable from that perspective. So what is the job? What do I do all day? I don't have an aquarium program on my computer, so that's not an option. Some of it is grants administration. In my particular case, very little. I have one grant in my portfolio. I'm hoping to expand that, but at the moment there's just one grant that I'm responsible for. When researchers have an idea for a grant they want to submit, or questions about a grant they've already submitted, they call me. Just an aside, if you're actually staying in academia for a little while and you plan to write a grant, you want to talk to me or the equivalent of me at whatever institute you're going to. That's my job, to talk to people and say, is this the kind of thing that we might fund if you get through review or not? It's actually an underappreciated function of our job. Not a lot of people take advantage of it. More people should. But anyways, that's one thing I do. If your grant gets really good reviews, then I still unless it scores at the very top, I still have to write a justification that goes up to my bosses, explaining why your grant is important and what its relevance is to cancer and why we should fund it. So that's a big part of the job, or it will be a bigger part of the job. The real main focus of the job is program development, which is a broad catch-all term for figuring out what kind of research the Cancer Institute ought to be funding in the future. And this is one of the big pros from my point of view of taking this job, is you really have to change your perspective. So when you're in an academic job or you're working in a lab, you have your field of expertise and the part of your field of expertise that you're really interested in, and then the part that's really your domain, and you sort of zoom in and you have a set of experiments that follows down this rabbit hole. And I'm not criticizing that, because like I said, I did that for 17 years and it was great. But this job requires you to pull out of the rabbit hole, get up in a helicopter or an airplane or something, and get a view of the landscape and figure out what is going on out there in the field, and then figure out what people are not doing that they really ought to be doing. What kind of research is going to, in my case, reduce the burden of cancer that's not being done. Often it involves trying to get people from different disciplines who don't talk to each other, who really ought to be talking to each other, get them together. And we can do that in a lot of different ways. We can hold workshops and little mini conferences. We have money for that. We write papers. We write review papers. We write white papers and so forth that go out and get published and say, here is a gap in the field. Like anyone publishes a review paper, but when we publish a review paper, it says, here's a gap in the field. Oh, and by the way, hint, hint, the authors are from the Cancer Institute, so you might want to think about doing some work in that field, because there might be money in it. The ultimate. Oh, sorry, I gotta move on. And then there's writing funding announcements. This is sort of like our equivalent of writing grants, which says people ought to be doing, this is exactly the kind of work people ought to be doing, the kind of work we ought to fund. So let me skip to how do you get a job. Well, you can do what I did and wait for an ad to come across your desk. Or you could start looking at, basically a lot of what Robert said. Check out the website of the program you're interested. You should talk to the person perhaps who has your job or a job near the one you want to have. See if they're planning on hiring, seeing if there are any opportunities, seeing if there's anything they know. We don't do LinkedIn so much, but there is this site called usajobs.gov where every government job gets posted. And so you want to search that using all of the all different varieties of search terms you can think of. And then when you apply for it, you have to go through something called the CERT, or the certification process. And this is where we get to, well, let me skip to that. So this is where we get to the part where Robert talked about spinning your experience. So, our HR people, just like his HR people, very literal. If there's a question, do you have experience in doing X? You have to spin your experience to say, yes, I do X. I do X really well. I'm like one of the 5% best people in the world at doing X. And just as a cautionary tale, the first time I filled out the cert, I didn't make it because I was being a little too honest. And then the person who wanted to hire me rewrote the cert to include specific things about my research program that you had to have. You don't want them to have to do that for you. I already mentioned government's a little slow, but when in your career should you do this? This is my last slide. Pretty much any time. I've got a high school intern right now. People have joined the division as postdocs and stayed on. People come over after doing a postdoc in the academic field. They come over as what are essentially junior faculty positions. I made the switch mid-career. And we also recently hired a guy who basically retired from his faculty job at a major university and came to work for us. So anytime you decide that maybe government work rather than the academia is for you, you can potentially make the jump. Whether you can, if you decide you don't like that and you want to jump back to academia, that's a different matter. Sometimes it depends on the kind of job you get. And when I took this job, they told me that I could jump back to academia. But some of those jobs you might have, some of those positions you might have made a more or less irreversible decision. So,
thank you. That's quite all right. I thought it was important. Thanks very much, Todd. I just wanted to mention Jeremy Wolf is at the back of the room. We have him to thank, I think, pretty much for allowing us to put on this workshop. So I think it deserves a round of applause.
Because they need some better UX folks.
it's not, oh, there you go.
Yep, it is. Thank you so much. I just need to find the monitor.
I thought it was sold out. There seems to be some space. Yeah. But Bill decided they play lunch plans or something.
You're out interviewing.
This is actually something my mother said to me when I told her that I was going into academia when I was in college. She actually has a PhD, and I guess I rebelled because all I wanted to do was become an academic, become a research professor, like many of you did or maybe still do. I have to say that you are all very brave for coming here. It's very brave of everyone to have this. I mean, I'm going to talk a little bit more emotionally than these gentlemen did for whatever reason, maybe because it was a little bit more recent that I left, but it was a really emotionally fraught thing for me to leave. I felt really stigmatized. I felt really scared. I would not have shown up to this without a trench coat because it was like, what will everyone think of me? So you're all here because you're thinking about leaving. Maybe by choice, maybe because you don't want to be in academia anymore, or maybe because you found something else that you're really excited about. I hope it's the second one. Or maybe you're leaving because you've been trying to get a job and you just can't, which is happening more and more and more, and you don't really know what else you want to do. I actually left my PhD program. I didn't even finish after 2 years. I left voluntarily. Well, sometimes you get the boot. I mean, I didn't. I have a really eclectic story, which is not useful in the sense that it's not directly applicable to any of you, but very useful in the sense that you can get almost wherever you want from wherever you are. So that's why I'm sort of going to tell you all the gritty details. Okay. So we all spent years trying to get up there, right? The view is really great, and there are serious barriers to entry that we've all overcome to some degree. And I was probably, like many of you, incredibly single-minded. All I wanted to do was be a professor at an R1 university, and that was pretty much going to carry me to like 80 years old, and that was it. And then there was some doubt. And I'll talk about that more in a second. And you're basically you're trapped. There are huge barriers to exit that nobody tells you about because nobody talks about exiting. You don't interact with people who aren't trying to do the same thing you're doing. It's a little bit like, it's an awesome cult, and I loved it, but it was a little bit like a cult. So getting out was obviously less academically rigorous than getting in, but very emotionally challenging. Am I a failure? What am I? Do I maybe just hate grad school because, like everybody hates graduate school, it's going to get better, right? What is everyone going to think about me? And most importantly, what is my life going to look like? Because I really couldn't imagine. And then externally, I felt like it was something I had to keep very private. I would talk to my friends and my family, but I certainly couldn't talk to the smartest people I knew who were my advisors in graduate school, right? I couldn't talk to them about this. And then, especially if I changed my mind, they weren't going to be as supportive of me doing other things, is all what I thought. And a lot of people kind of reinforced my own internal monologue that I was having. It's just a phase, you'll get over it, everybody hates grad school. How did I get out? How did I get there in the first place? So my trajectory was pretty standard, I think. I started, studying psychology in college, so I was really interested in the connection between the mind and the brain, and I had a great brief career. I worked with really intelligent, amazing, supportive people. After Brown, I worked with Anthony Wagner on Learning and Memory Lab. I was at MIT with him for a year, and then I went out to Stanford. And then I went to Columbia in their psychology program for a PhD, working with the late, great Ed Smith for 2 years. And it was really an incredible experience that I felt more and more was not for me. So what I did was sign up for culinary school part-time while I was still enrolled in my PhD program. I would present at lab meeting, and I would also bring croissants. And, that was not, I don't recommend this to anybody. Something very terrible happened to me personally that year. Obviously, I'd already started, thinking about leaving because I was kind of exploring other opportunities, but I wasn't kind of ready to hedge my bets. I always thought, I'll just finish the PhD, so at least I'll have it, and then I can, figure it out after that. My brother passed away that year, and that was mostly, obviously a completely terrible thing to have happen, but that level of trauma kind of gave me a pass. Now, I wasn't I didn't do this because that happened. I'd been thinking about it anyway, but people are much less likely to question you, for better or worse, when you have, a terrible personal tragedy happen. So I was able to very easily take a leave from school. I don't think it's usually that easy, right, if you're just thinking about another career. I took a leave, and then I got a job as a pastry cook in a restaurant, because that's what you do with your stack of degrees. You go work in a restaurant kitchen. I did that, and then my year was up. I went to London to be an assistant chocolatier in a chocolate shop there. I finished my master's thesis so I could get my degree. The university was great, very supportive, and my advisors were very supportive, helping me finish out my research. I helped them write the method section for publication, which is finally getting published this year. And that's going to be really useful for me now. I can add that one to my resume. Anyway, sorry. All right, so after I came back, I did what any person with this history would do. I opened my own chocolate shop. Oh. And that's it. No. Bye. No. All right, I opened my own chocolate shop in New York, which was also a great experience. And then I closed the chocolate shop 4 years later because I opened the chocolate shop in 2008, and then some things changed. And then I got my first real job in marketing, right? What I had been doing at the chocolate shop was teaching myself how to market. I had this product that I was really passionate about, and how do I let other people know about it? So it seemed like a solvable problem. And somebody, I guess, thought I did a good enough job about that because I got a job at a really cool startup as a brand manager, which is a job basically, it's a marketing job basically, but you're responsible, it's sort of like the client side really. You work for one specific company. It was a startup though, so there was no 9 to 5. It was like whatever, whenever. But it was a lot actually sort of like an academic environment in some ways, which is not traditional, I think, of most corporations. That startup changed its business model 3 times in the 12 months that I was there. That was incredibly frustrating for me. As a psychologist, I really like to be a little bit more careful with my decisions and my evaluations of things, and you really don't just, it was frustrating. So I left. The good thing about the corporate world is they really can't fire you if you've done nothing wrong, so they just offer you money to leave if they're not doing well. So they paid me a bunch of money to leave on my own. And then I got into restaurant marketing. As you guys can see, I love food, wine, hospitality. That's the other thing besides psychology that I'm really passionate about. Marketing is actually a great way for me to combine those two things. And now I have a job that I'm really excited about that I love. I'm working as a marketing manager for a big restaurant group called the Patina Restaurant Group. They're kind of bi-coastal. If you're in New York or California, you've probably heard of them, or at least you've heard of some of their restaurants.
They're on graduate student salaries.
Right. You may have seen other people eating it. Yep. So this is my experience, but I don't recommend that you do it this way. If you're there, I'm not going to lie and say that a PhD in psychology is the best preparation for a career in marketing. It's not, but presumably we're all a little bit down that path, if not all the way down the path. But I'm here to tell you that it is a great preparation, right? It's not worth it because you certainly don't need it. It's the overqualification problem that I was talking about. But increasingly, employers are really looking for something different, something unique, something that is not just the same old MBA. And what makes you not unique in this crowd makes you so unique in that kind of job field. You just need to explain to HR, and I think that's one thing we can all agree on, HR is the worst. They are the worst. I mean, you can say, if you don't have marketing coordinator, marketing intern, marketing manager as your last 3 jobs, they're not going to look at your resume unless you use LinkedIn or you use your connections and you get your foot in the door another way. Networking, I really didn't understand it before I got into the business world, and it is so critical. It seems like you're wasting time or using it as an excuse to go out for drinks or something. But it's not that fun, right? It's just something you have to do. And it's not disingenuous in the sense that you're making connections that are mutually useful, right? You never know where you're going to end up in 5 years or the person you're meeting with is going to end up in 5 years. So definitely network. I would recommend this path, not the one I took. Yeah, that's all. So you have a lot to offer as to any company. If you want to get into marketing as a psychologist, you just need to explain it to them, because more and more you need to say, here's what I can do for you. They don't care that you're really smart and you have a lot of potential, which was a big shock for me, because I feel like a lot how academia is. It's all based on your merit and your capabilities, and that's not how it is here. It's what have you done, or show me exactly how you're going to do it for me. So I'm running out of time, but I will say that I think psychologists are the best marketers. I view marketing as doing experiments on people who pay you, right? You want to, what's the desired outcome? You want to, in my case, get more people to come to your restaurant or to attend the wine dinner that so you try different things, right? Maybe you make an email that you send out to people, that advertises a particular winemaker, and you put a subject line. And then you try a different subject line. And then you feature the email in different ways. It's basically a big experiment, right? You're trying to see which is the most effective at getting more people to spend money on your product at your place. You guys are probably really good at doing experiments. And they call them A/B tests. And I'm like, there's really only one variable? That's amazing. I can do that. There's so much data, especially in digital marketing. And most people are not 1/10 as capable as you guys are at handling the data in an intelligent way. People are really scared by numbers, and presumably you're not. So that's a tremendous asset. We also don't fear the unknown. We think outside of the box. We have to design experiments, and that is a really rare trait in the business world. The business world tends to be pretty rigid and has a very specific path. I mean, just like our world, right? It's very rigid and has a very specific path, but this one leads to a lot of people who aren't able to think for themselves. I'm just generalizing, but it's kind of true. And you're all able to think for yourselves. Also really good skills with PowerPoint and Excel. Although I never used Excel in graduate school, I was always using MATLAB. And so I was like, oh, I did all this data analysis. And they're like, okay, now Excel's great. It does all of this stuff for you. I was like, I don't have to write a code for this? That's amazing. Project management. And then finally, what I think is pretty special is that we are always, trying to design experiments that, make sense. You have to put yourself in the subject. You're a subject all the time for your friends' experiments, your mentors' experiments. People in the business world don't do this nearly enough, right? Just because I have this amazing winemaker coming from Sicily that I'm really excited about, you guys don't care, right? How do I make you care about that? So putting yourself in that person's shoes, I think, is a really valuable skill. I just want to say that marketing is really fun. And the good thing about marketing is that if you can get a job in a company where they're doing something awesome that you really care about, like food or wine, it's a lot more fun than psychology. Thank you.
And we're back to me. And if I were wearing a hat, I would take it off to you, because I applaud your courage. I was nowhere near as courageous as Rachel was. My career path was very vanilla, let's just say. And I didn't plan this as like good cop, bad cop, but I feel now after hearing Todd and Rachel speak that I was kind of the bad cop. It made you all feel horribly about transitioning out of, and all the obstacles and HR people and all that. I just wanted to make sure that you're not blindsided when you if you may embark on a transition into the private sector, because this was everything I presented to you was kind of new to me. It was kind of like, holy smokes, what's going on here? I wish someone had told me this. So here I am telling you all this, hopefully, so that you'll have that when you apply. I'm not going to talk so much about my career transition and the things I've done. I worked at Siemens Corporate Research before coming to the company I work for now, which is called Exponent. Siemens was an engineering company with a 100-some-year tradition, 480,000 employees, and you're working as a lonely psychologist who understands what goes on in people's heads against 479,999 engineers who all go, people are dumb. This is engineered to perfection. If they don't get it, that's their problem. And so I decided, enough of that, trying to convince engineers. Now I'm a spider sitting in its web waiting for engineers to, I almost said something profane, goof up. And then the company gets sued. And then, in an act of desperation, they come to me. How's that for a business model? So what Exponent does is, originally they were known as Failure Analysis Associates, and that was kind of a downer, the whole failure thing. So they changed their name to Exponent. I've actually, when I interviewed for them, the guy at Hertz, I think he was from Romania, he was like, oh, I'm failure. When he saw my reservation under failure analysis, said, you should analyzing me. I'm failure. I killing myself. I was like, whoa. I did not sign up for this. Okay, so what is Exponent? Exponent is a multidisciplinary engineering, and I can't stress the multidisciplinary enough. This is a really cool part about working there. You'll see in a moment what all we have. Engineering and scientific consulting firm that brings together more than 90 different disciplines to solve important engineering, science, and regulatory issues facing Exponent's clients. And when you walk down our halls, you can see that kind of in these, where's my laser pointer? You can see that kind of in these images. They're all very uplifting, right? So other companies have cute little kittens and furry bunnies, and they say, teamwork, yay. And we have crashed airplanes and collapsed buildings and sunken ships and oil spills, and it's, going in every day in the morning is just so uplifting. But the flip side is we get to work with some very cool people. So if you're concerned about leaving academia and leaving all the smart people behind, 90% almost of our employees, of our 900 employees, are at the master's or doctorate level. Exponent is the oldest, largest engineering scientific consulting firm in the world. We work on high exposure problems. So, for example, we were involved in the World Trade Center 2 tower collapse. We actually have a piece of the World Trade Center in our lobby. You're all too young to remember the Exxon Valdez, I assume. I stopped buying Exxon gasoline for a while when I was a teenager starting to drive. Big oil spill. We were involved in that. Space shuttle, nozzle design, the city center in Las Vegas. I don't know if you saw that elliptical building that has to be torn down and now not. I forget which one it is, but we were working on the evaluation of that. The Death Ray Hotel in Las Vegas, the one that focuses all the sun rays, because no one thought of this, in the desert, a big glass mirrored building, concave shape. What could possibly happen? So plastic cups are melting by the pool. So we're on these all these really high visibility cases. I just came back from what was that, Tuesday? Oh God, I'm all mixed up. I just testified in court, and that's the majority of what we do at Exponent is currently, at least in the human factors practice, is testify in legal cases. This is what I was talking about, the people coming to us when they get sued. It was a $52 million lawsuit, and I was the sole expert, so all eyes were on me, and plaintiffs really laid into me, and the plaintiffs happened to be a government entity, and they sent out their best attorney, apparently. So that was comfortable. But it kind of makes you feel like what you're doing, like Todd was saying, what you're doing is important, because a lot of I think from all the clients I've seen, they're being unfairly sued. And in some cases, I do a lot of medical device cases. They're really just trying to help people. And then there are people out there who are suing because they're sensing an opportunity. Well, I won't pass judgment, but it's just a very litigious, or in Canada, I forget. The USA is just a very litigious place, for those who didn't realize that. And so we're involved in that. We're definitely agency side. What we do is very fast-paced. So all the things I said about the agency side, about the diversity of work, all that applies. Here's an overview of our different disciplines. It's just really cool when you can send out an all-employee email saying, does anyone have any expertise in the standard of care of public water facilities? And then I get an email back within seconds saying, oh yes, I was actually on the board of directors of the water facility, whatever, maintenance organization and government organization in the state where this lawsuit occurred. wow, what a more perfect fit could you possibly find? And so we get to work with all these different engineers in our daily work. We have some pretty nifty labs. This happens to be the facility where I work. We have the largest automotive test track outside the automotive industry, so we actually run experiments on there, which is pretty fun. We had one where we backed over little girls. Of course, they were cutouts of little girls, but they would pop up behind the vehicle unannounced, and it was miraculous. When we did eye tracking, it was miraculous where some people would focus. We had one woman who was looking up in the left corner, and I'm thinking, what's up there? There's no mirror. There's nothing up there. I think she was used to turning around, but she'd gotten so old and kind of heavy set that the instinct was still there, but like this is all she could muster. And so she was kind of persevered in her behavior, but it didn't really amount to anything. But we have combustion chambers and corrosion chambers, and we blow stuff up all the time. If you watch, what's up? The science show where they Mythbusters. So if you watch, thank you. If you watch Mythbusters, the episode where they crash two cars to see if it's two cars at 50 miles per hour is the same as one car at 100, that was us. That was our facility. They didn't put our engineers on apparently because we made the Mythbuster guys look bad. But that was done at our facility. Actually, right here in this test facility. So we have offices all over, which is kind of cool. Human factors, which is where the psychology folks are recruited. And we actually value a strong background, and that's what we look for, is a strong background in one of the psychological science disciplines, so experimental, cognitive, perceptual. That's actually something we value, that we're a company where you don't need to hide your PhD, but we flaunt it. So we're represented in Chicago, Phoenix, that would be me. I'm the human factors guy in Phoenix. Soon to be two. Just hired someone. Where else? Philadelphia, we have lots of human factors people. And then the Bay Area, and also Los Angeles. These are some of the questions we've been asked, just to give you an kind of idea of the diversity of work that we do. My favorite is one: we need 8 liters of synthetic urine, which I didn't even realize existed. What do you do with, well, when can we have it, and how much will it cost? I don't know the answer to these things, but that's why you come to Exponent, to find these things out. And someone, I promise you, someone within the organization will know. So I think this is just such a prime example of client-driven. You have no idea what's next. It's kind of suspenseful. It's kind of like a cliffhanger. Like, what kind of project are we getting at? Gasoline. Wow, I've never worked on gasoline. That's cool. I get to learn something about gasoline. That's the actual case I worked on, was constituents and gasoline. Never thought I'd learn anything about it, but interesting case. Schedules are definitely client-driven. Questions are completely client-driven. They're obscure in some cases. It's definitely not a 9-to-5 job, but it's constantly something going on. Thanks so much, Todd.
Got to chair a panel.
Yeah, so what can I tell you? It's pretty much, this is exactly what I was describing about the agency side. And that's all the slides I have, because we're also we're already we cut into our Q&A time. So this is really an opportunity for you to ask questions of Rachel and me.
I think someone has a question.
Yes.
So both you and Todd mentioned that salaries in government and private sector are comparable. You used the word comparable to academic salaries. Well, we all know that academic salary base goes from practically grad student stipends all the way to 3-digit salaries. What do you mean by that?
I was thinking more of the 3-digit. Oh, I'm sorry. The question was, Todd and I both alluded to the salaries in the private sector being comparable in some ways to, none of these people want to make money, was in some ways comparable to academia, but the academic salaries run the gamut from, graduate student income to 6-figure salaries. And I was thinking more of the six-figure range when I was saying comparable. I think my words were, for the Facebook, comparable to a tenured full professor who's doing pretty well. A friend of mine just got hired at Facebook, got what was offered to me as a starting assistant professor salary as a signing bonus. Now, that's not the reason to switch from academia. Don't all start packing up your stuff and closing up your laptops. Because I think there's really something to be said for, and you can find intrinsic job satisfaction in the private sector. I think Rachel's a beautiful example of that. But personally, not that I hate my job. I think I hope I brought across some sort of enthusiasm and excitement about what I do. But I like to say I used to live to work. Now I work to live. I mean, the living part has gotten a little more elaborate. Now I can eat at her company's restaurants, which is awesome. But you know, when I had a chance to, I think I got an invited editorial response to TAWIS 2011. I forget. And I literally jumped out of bed that Saturday morning. It's terribly dorky, I know, but it was like, woo, I get to write an academic paper. And it was just such a nice change from what I usually do. So I think there's something to be said for intrinsic rewards, so don't all rush out just for the dollar signs.
But I will say that unless you're, and that's the thing, you wouldn't start at an entry-level job in marketing with a PhD. You just wouldn't. So maybe like a coordinator level job is like a little bit more than a grad student, but marketing definitely pays a lot better. And I'm in restaurant marketing, which is sort of on the low end of that because restaurants are not like a big tech company or something like that. The pay is much better. That's certainly not why I switched. I mean, I was making chocolate in an alley for a while. I mean, it's definitely not for the money, but it's definitely a lot more comfortable.
Yeah, I think comfortable is exactly how I describe it. It's not like we're all driving around in Ferraris and Lamborghinis now.
I don't have a car.
Yes, please.
Yes, can you talk more about the timing? So we know when we're looking for postdocs, we need to start looking like a year in advance. You know, networking and fly interviews and contacting for potential advisors. But you said it's like right then you have to apply because you write that next week to work there. But we're still getting PhD. Like how can we balance the timing? If we're still not deciding if we're going to go to academia or go to the industry. How do we do that?
Okay, so the question was about how to get the timing right for a private sector job application. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yes. It's a big process. The courting analogy is quite accurate, unfortunately. The process of applying for a job, that whole 2-week window, that's the very end, right? All that stuff that you were talking about with the networking, that's completely applicable here too, and especially if you're considering a career switch. And if you aren't totally sure, I wouldn't really recommend publicizing it within your academic community, but go outside your academic community, talk to your friends, talk to your network, start putting feelers out, finding out, getting introduced to people, because you may get all these connections to companies, but they may not have, the right company might not have the right job at the right time. So you need to kind of have a pretty broad window. But it's true that once the job is offered, I call it hurry up and wait. I had 4 interviews in a week and a half for my current job, and then they just waited 2 weeks before they decided to offer it to me, because they could, because they're not organized. But I would just say start as early as you can with the sort of soft part of the application process, which is just making connections.
So I think I'm glad you asked that question because I think I misrepresented the whole timing issue a little. It's not so much that you sit around and wait for a job to come around and then you pounce on it, but you have to be constantly preparing for whatever job comes along. It's just when you see it in all those preparations that you're doing, you just have to be prepared to, when the opportunity arises, then act quickly. I had, I'd networked for weeks and months for a particular opportunity, and then the company said, "We want you to start next week." I said, first of all, I have a 2-week notice I have to give my employer. Secondly, I'm not just going to, drop everything and leave and relocate next week to another city. I have a condo to sell. I have, people to calm down. My entourage would be transplanted. You know, you can't just drop everything and move. But you know, if I really wanted that job, timing there was crucial. I really did really want it, but if I realistically wanted it, I guess that's what would have had to have done, is drop everything and move. And I guess what I was also trying to get across is don't send me an application 2013 when you're done in June 2014. It makes no sense. I don't know what I need in 2014. It's basically like looking in your fridge and going, I'm out of milk. I mean, you know, yes, I saw the milk container getting lower and lower. Could I have had the foresight to know, in about a day or two I'm going to have to buy more milk, and I could proactively go out and get some more milk, so I'll have some milk when I need it? No, it's 11 at night, I want some cookies and milk. Darn, I'm out of milk. It's exactly that.
I think I wouldn't apply if you see a job posting that you're interested in. Don't apply for it if you can't start in like a month.
Yeah, you'll burn bridges and you'll make a bad impression. Unless it's kind of not really interested in this, but it's great. I'm saying this off the record, because you never want to waste anyone's time or money. And every time we conduct an interview, we have 5 people sit down with you. I bill at $285 an hour. Take that times 5. That's a lot of investment of money, just in terms of personnel time into your interview. So I'm not suggesting you waste anyone's time and money, but it is good to get some practice. And the more of these interviews you do, and also don't get all heartbroken if you apply for one thing that looks absolutely perfect. I have to have this job. It's my dream job. Eyelashes flashing. Yeah, there are a zillion jobs out there.
But it's
So what?
It's such a big switch. When I was applying to college, and when I was applying for research jobs, and when I was applying for grad school, it was like I found the perfect program with the perfect thing, and I had the right, and it was so easy. You match your skills to the availability, and that's it. And you get the job, and you get the position, and that's it. It's so not like that now. I've been perfect for like 37 things, and I got one of them.
Yeah, sometimes you have to really impress on the company, too, just how perfect you are for the position. There was one I saw where I thought, wow, this is me. This job description was written about me. and it took me applying for it online, which is basically like sending it into a black hole, networking on LinkedIn, linking with the the marketing VP, building up my rapport with him, copying, pasting the job description into Google to see where else it might be posted, kind of figuring out that way what company it even was that was posting the job, reaching out to the external recruiter for that position, and then finally, after I think a month and a half of intense effort on my part, wow, you're perfect for this job. Thank you. That's what I'm trying to tell you. Oh, and just speaking of black hole, true story apparently, major car manufacturer, a friend of mine, former colleague, I was sitting in the office of a hiring manager of one of the major car manufacturers, and the guy had a stack this tall of resumes on his desk, and he goes and slides his left hand halfway down and just takes the top half of the stack and drops it in the trash and says, these people are unlucky. They have poor luck. Why would I want to hire someone who's unlucky? That's just not good for the company. So that can happen.
Don't get scared. This sounds terrible.
Good cop, bad cop, remember?
Sorry.
Over there, question?
Since some of these folks are probably still deciding, academic, non-academic, you may not have an answer for this question, but I'm curious, what types of things do you miss from the academic environment, or might you regret that you traded off? Do you have any of that at home?
My friends. No, really.
I miss friends. I miss that all I needed to do to study something was like convince, my mentor or something that I thought it was cool and I wanted to look into it. I can't do that now. Everything that I do has to have a sort of a business purpose. I miss that a lot. I also sometimes I miss talking about psychology all the time, right? Because that's all I used to do is talk about it all the time. I'm happy that I don't do it all the time anymore, but sometimes I miss that lifestyle because it's different. There's a lot of intellectual curiosity that is built into this community, and I miss that sometimes.
I miss the work being passion-driven, intrinsic interest-driven. Now it's entirely client-driven. We pay you to be interested in this. Okay, yes, sir, I will be interested in this. I miss my friends. But I mean, I have to say for Exponent at least, the culture is pretty comparable because Exponent was founded by 3 professors at Stanford. And so they've kind of maintained a little bit of that academic culture. And it translates even to such things as we all come in our jeans and T-shirts. I mean, when we meet with clients, of course, I'm going to dress in a suit, but for the most part, we just dress pretty casually, and we have good relationships among one another, and there's no backstabbing or corporate politics. So I think it's as close. I mean, minus the publishing and doing research and stuff that you're interested in, it's pretty close culturally, at least to academia, and even the ranks in the company are kind of comparable to, and your duties in those ranks are kind of comparable to grad student, postdoc, junior faculty, senior faculty.
I mean, I guess mine's sort of the flip side. I don't nearly work with the level of academic intelligence that I used to, but everyone is incredibly passionate about. I mean, cooking and restaurants and hospitality. I mean, you don't get into that because you're going to make $1 million. So I definitely am surrounded by people who are passionate about something else. And now I talk about food and wine all the time.
Sorry. Yes, please. I think your hand went up first.
Okay. I've got 2 quick questions. I think I understood right. Take the PhD off the resume?
It depends. Just like I said, dress appropriately. You really want to do some reconnaissance about your company. People go to the extreme of they park out. I mean, I'm not suggesting you go to this extreme, but they park outside in the company parking lot to see what do people wear who come out of the company. What's their culture? I know one guy who found out the hiring manager was a Rotary Club member, went out and bought a Rotary Club tie. He wasn't a member, but he wore it to the interview, and so they had immediate rapport. I mean, you want to know what the culture of the company is. Taylor, you need to learn to be very customer-oriented because your job will entail being customer-oriented, and so your interview is basically the company will treat it as this is how our prospective employee would behave in a future encounter with a client.
So if there aren't, like if I go on LinkedIn for a particular job I'm interested in and I find a resume that looks like my job, I should look and see whether or not there's a PhD on there.
Yes, yeah, and see whether the PhD would be an asset or whether the PhD would hurt you.
I have one
Sure.
question.
We have time.
I think I understood that you said, look at the job description, for example, project manager or, quality assurance, this kind of thing. Are these the kinds of terms I could, as a, PhD student, put on my resume because I've done just those things, however, in the academic context? That is, I've run a study, I have overseen RAs, I have coordinated with, diverse team members, this kind of thing.
This is the spin I was talking.
Yeah.
The question was about if the job description says project managed research, for example, is it legitimate to say, well, I've done those things on my resume, even though you've done them in an academic context? And I would say absolutely. That's what I was talking about when I said spin your experience. If you want to go as far as to say, I do studies on computer displays, to get the point across of, you may have user interfaces that are in computer displays, but that's, yes, human-computer interaction. That's another buzzword that I didn't put on there, but that's a good one, definitely, human-computer interaction.
You really have to know your audience, right? That the language you're going to use, the resume is like getting you through the gate of the HR person. Know your audience, right? That HR person doesn't know anything about what it is you do and probably doesn't know anything about what the job, the person in that job is going to be doing. So, I mean, when I've been to interviews where they say, psychology, so you know what people are thinking. Yep, I do. But, I mean, that's sort of an extreme example, but you just know your audience, and you just need to tailor every presentation of yourself to every occasion.
And I think we've been a little harsh on HR, in all fairness. Their job is to find people for a variety of departments, and I respect the work that they do. They may have to cater to electrical engineering, mechanical engineering, and human factors, and they may know a little bit about something about all of those, but not really. And it's kind of an uncomfortable position for them to be in, and so they get their cheat sheet, and what are you going to do if you have a cheat sheet of this is what we're looking for? How are they to know? And so, of course, they're going to go through very literally of this is what I need. I mean, if you're making chocolate, you kind of know, because you're the expert, you kind of know, and you can fudge things, no pun intended. But if I don't know about chocolate and you send me out with a shopping list of get me these things, and I'm like, oh no, it says finely grained sugar here. Is medium grained okay? I mean, I really wouldn't know, but you would go, oh sure, I'll just do it with medium grained. That's because you know. So it's a little like that. Is there in the back?
Yeah, I'm wondering if you can give a little more explicit guidance on networking. So, for example, I don't really know anybody who isn't an academic research psychologist. I just don't know how to start that process.
The question was about how to even begin to network, take up golf, and
LinkedIn is the absolute best thing, because you don't even know who your friends know, right? You don't know, maybe you don't know any anyone other than an academic psychologist, but one of your academic psychologist friends probably went to undergrad with somebody who is now a consultant at McKinsey. So you need to use LinkedIn, and then you say to your friend, hey, I see you went to Dartmouth with this guy. Can you please introduce me? And so then you meet that guy. If that goes well, then that guy, you connect with him on LinkedIn, and then you just use your connections and you grab at people who you've never met before. And in the business world, this is not weird, right? You just say, I'm interested in what you're doing. You don't say, I want a job, please help me. What you say is, I'm interested in what you do. I'd love to find out more about, can I buy you a coffee, and can you tell me a little bit more about that? Most people are happy to oblige, and you just want to play up whatever your connection to that person is. If somebody, went to Brown undergrad, I'll definitely meet with them. I don't, even if I've never met them or they're not connected to me. If a friend introduces me to someone, I have, once a month, I have coffee with somebody that I'm connected with through somebody else, because they want to know about what I'm doing, and I've done the same on the other way. So just ask.
I think that finding something, as you mentioned, finding something you have in common is very important. The first thing I always do when I look over LinkedIn profile of someone I'm trying to reach out to for a position is, what do I have in common with this person? Oh, we both went to Johns Hopkins. Hey, and you immediately have something to talk about. It's different than getting some anonymous cold call from someone of, hey, I have nothing in common with you, but let's have a call.
And the thing in common may be a person, right? So you may have nothing in common with that person except for a mutual friend or acquaintance, and that's fine. Or you hit somebody up because you have the same alma mater, or you both, I don't know, play soccer or whatever.
And I can't stress enough the importance of LinkedIn.
Wait, LinkedIn?
I went to a counseling by the premier job placement firm, apparently in the U.S. And they've placed millions of people over the years. And their person who gave the crash course basically on job seeking says that he himself annually retakes his own company's seminars on LinkedIn. That's how important it is. Yes, in the back there? So the question is, if you put a LinkedIn profile up, do companies actually proactively search the LinkedIn profiles before they post a job? And sometimes they may not even post the job. They may just search on LinkedIn, especially if they're looking for a pretty high-level position. They'll go straight to LinkedIn and see who's out there, who's suitable, and they'll try to poach you from potentially from your current employer.
I got my current job in this really weird way. I had been having a coffee chat with somebody, and he recommended this restaurant group. So I looked at a couple profiles on LinkedIn. I didn't know this, but that company was actually hiring for my current job at the time. And LinkedIn shows you who's looked at your profile. So one of the women, the marketing director there, saw that I had looked at her profile. She told her HR guy to reach out to me. So she said, oh, Tanya, this woman, Tanya thought you'd be great fit for this job. Can you come in? Can you apply? I did, and now I have the job because of that. I didn't even know the job was available. So
I've been in situations where people found me or companies found me on LinkedIn and then started a conversation and said, how do we build a job around you? So not even were they not posting a job description, but they just wanted me, and then we're going to fashion the job around it. So these things can all happen. And you can't be noticed if your profile isn't out there. I mean, think about academia, if you haven't published, who would know you outside of your lab or your network. Of course, in academia, I think networking is important too, because even if you haven't published, people might still know you, just because you have an extensive network and people kind of think of you as a smart person who they like to have around, who makes good intellectual contributions to conversations, even if you haven't had a chance to publish yet. So I think networking is also important in academia, and it's important for the same reasons in the private sector. It's over there.
My question is specific to human factors positions at students, but I think it's relevant to other jobs. I think the nature of the work, a lot of our human factors positions require security clearance, and I was wondering if exponent has the requirements and what is the importance of that requirement in the hiring process.
So the question was, a lot of the human factors positions have security clearance requirements, and whether the human factors positions at Exponent in particular have that same requirement. And the answer is no. We don't do a lot of engineering consulting in the sense of proactively helping companies build things like airplane cockpits or, when I worked at Siemens, I worked on some Department of Defense contracts, and certainly their security clearance was an issue. But we were actually proactively building things. Exponent, currently at least, and that may change in the future, the human factors practice historically has focused on litigation support. So what we do is, as I said, if a company gets sued, they approach us to, well, actually, they retain an attorney, and the attorney approaches us to serve as an expert in the litigation matter.
I'm just trying to think about different ways to exploit different factors, like human factors, human interaction, marketing, while still in graduate school. And you don't have as many opportunities to do that because it's not like an undergrad where you can just take a bunch of classes. So is there a good way to find an internship during graduate school? Like, how would you approach someone in a different field to maybe intern for a summer or work for them on the side, just to be able to put that on your resume that you're doing this kind of thing?
Good question. So the question was, how do you get an exposure to the different opportunities there are, different types of work there are in the private sector, being a graduate student, because you're not an undergraduate where you could just take a semester where you become a co-op at a company. So how do you accomplish the same thing as a graduate student?
So step one is building a network, so that you have to ask for those opportunities, and obviously how you're going to manage that really depends on your own personal graduate program. I did go to culinary school part-time, so you can do it. I went nights and weekends, so there were some days when I had to leave early, and I was doing this on the DL, so nobody really knew at the time.
What did your application to culinary school look like? Did you just emphasize that was something you're interested in and passionate about?
Well, culinary school is different because it's you just pay and they take you. It's very different from everything else. But in terms of an internship, you would just, research about the company, figure out what your value proposition is. At the level of a grad student, probably data analysis, your project management, all of the skills. You would just say, I'm interested in exploring this field. I have this valuable skill set, and I think people would be willing to take a chance on you. And then it's just understanding that they're not trying to do you any favors, right? Your schedule might not be compatible with that, but it might be. So I would just say network until you can get those opportunities. And I would find that really attractive if I could have a PhD student, doing an internship with me. So I know Google takes interns also. Facebook
It pays well, really well.
Yeah,
really well.
Those interns make a lot of money.
Really, really well for internships.
Yeah.
Just as an aside, the woman I just hired to work for me in Phoenix, she did an internship for us before a couple years ago before we hired her. At Siemens, I used to manage the internship program. I built that up to 11 interns, and I think it was a really worthwhile experience for them because they didn't really know what it's like to work in the private sector, and that's a very non-committal way of finding that out. I'm not so supportive of the argument of, boo-hoo, I have a full-time job, or I'm a full-time this or that. I don't have time to go looking around. Internship is one thing. and because that does require a pretty severe time commitment. But at least in terms of job search, I mean, at one point I was working 70 to 80 hours a week, and still found time somehow for 11 interviews and a web teleconference and a written exam. So you make the time. If you're really committed, you make the time. Yes?
Actually, I have an answer to that question, and a question too. So I know you guys have been talking about HR. My sister-in-law is actually at HR for BCG. So and it's exactly what you said. She gets a list and goes down the line.
And BCG, just by the way, is Boston Consulting Group, which is one of the top 5. They're the big 5 consulting groups, and they're one of them.
But they actually have a bridge program specifically tailored for what they call ADs, advanced degrees. So it's only 3 days that you take off. And it's to kind of try and show you a little bit about what it might be to be a consultant. And I don't know if any other VA consulting companies do that, but to start looking around, there are opportunities. And then my other question is actually going back to LinkedIn, because everything's about LinkedIn. So I too have been kind of leading, a little bit of a dual life, researching some of my interests and things. Right now, my LinkedIn profile is very, I am cognitive psychologist, so how do you work in all the other stuff that has not so much to do with that?
I will say that the likelihood that other people who are not also looking around for non-academic careers are going to be paying any attention to your LinkedIn profile. Like, I doubt that your professors or other colleagues, unless they're in the same boat, are not going to be looking at that, because it's just not really how you get things done in academia. LinkedIn, it really is business oriented, so I wouldn't worry about that too much. You also don't have to put a very precise career objective. You can kind of put whatever you want, so you can leave it vague if you're sort of worried about that kind of thing. But play up your skills that are relevant to your other interests more than you're playing up your publications, or you just want to highlight different things, right? Everyone in psychology is good at data analysis, right? Okay, but not every person in the business world is good at data analysis. So those things that make you unique, just play up those skills as opposed to your specific academic accomplishments, I think.
Yeah, to put you somewhat at ease, just do a couple searches for people you know in your field, and you'll find that if you happen to find one of them, they'll have maybe 5 connections. So it's kind of like worrying that your parents are on Facebook or Twitter. Not so likely. Yeah. Plus, one thing you can do is so every time you change your LinkedIn profile, it sends out notifications to all your connections. You can turn that off. That's a feature you can turn off.
Yeah.
Yes. And you can turn it on or off strategically. So if you make a lot of changes preparing for a job application, you turn it off, and you make all the changes, and then when you want people to see, oh, it's the all-new me, I've rebranded myself, then you turn it on so that when you add some significant feature that you want everyone to notice to it, then you turn it on so it's broadcast to everyone. Yes?
Just going back to the whole unneeded PhD for the resume question. I'm just, like if you, for example, the job description requires a master, so like if you don't go to school, but PhD studies, if you get it, omitted it from the resume, but then how do you explain what you've been doing for the last 5 years?
Do you want to take that one?
No, I don't, because I'm curious.
The question was the position doesn't really require a PhD, and you have a PhD, and do you hide it? But then if you hide it, how do you explain what you've been doing for the last 5 years of your life? I was in prison. That's actually not so far from the truth. It doesn't, not for everything does it. I always leave my PhD on, just because I figure this is me, what you see is what you get. If you don't like it, that's tough for you.
I'd put it at the bottom of the resume, so that doesn't mean it's the most important thing for you, right? My friend has her PhD, and her resume now starts with it's 3 sections of skills, and then how she expresses those skills through her achievements, most of which are academic, but she's tailored them to sound less academic. And her PhD's on there, but it's the bottom of the resume, right above the fact that she likes to ski. So I guess I would just de-emphasize it so you're not So the employer doesn't feel like this is your backup plan, right?
They spend an average, I forget what it is, it's some abysmally small amount of time actually looking over your resume, so you want some eye-catching things, and of course the most eye-catching thing is the fact that you have a PhD, but your educational history is going to be on there, so you're not hiding it. If you just leave it off your name, they may just glance at your educational history and go, oh, nice school or something, and they might even consider it a bonus that they're getting someone with a PhD. But you'll just have to do more explaining, more fancy footwork in your one-on-one interview, explaining why you're still. I mean, I get that a lot. Aren't you a little academic? And then you say, well, some of the same skills that allow you to succeed in academia, which is good time management and networking and getting your name out there and branding yourself and sales. You have to convince people of your ideas. It's not enough to publish it. People have to buy into your whole ideology that you build up around your research finding, and they either do or they don't. So there's a lot of convincing to do. Some of the same skills allow you to succeed in academia are also what allow you to succeed in the private sector, in business. So you can address it that way.
And there are people who write resumes for a living, professional resume writers. Two of my friends who, I don't know, I know two other people who actually got their PhDs and left academia, and they both went to these. One was like a recruiter, and one was just a resume writer who helped translate their academic achievements into a more sort of marketable for the business world.
And ultimately, it's all about spin and experience. So you downplay the three letters. If those three letters mean you spent 5 years actually designing studies, A and B comparison, analyzing data, managing projects. It's as Rachel was saying, private sector is very results and experience oriented. And so if you can demonstrate I've done X, Y, Z, so a lot of the interviewing will be behavioral interviewing too. Give me an example where you've managed someone, and then you give an example. So I think they even present you with an opportunity to spin your experience, because you're now less credentials and publication numbers and all that focused, but more what have I actually done focused. So typically in academia, your accomplishments are all summed up in those three letters. It's 5, 6 years, but it's all reduced to those three letters, right? And once you have them, like, oh, hello, doctor. But that hello, doctor stands for I've spent. But that's typically downplayed in academia because it's viewed just as a requirement. Okay, you have to do this and check off that and get to the stage and pass your comps and blah, to get your PhD. Whereas in the private sector, it's much more experience oriented. And now you pull out all that stuff that you had to do for 5 years. Now you actually bring that to the forefront of I spent 5 years running a lab, designing experiments, and it's not just reduced to those three letters, but it's much more focused on pulling apart, expanding those 5 years and going into detail of all your experience that you've amassed over that time. Yes, in the back.
So all of us here are probably cognitive psychologists. So what specific skill sets that we have as cognitive psychologists do other people that are going to be looking at these sorts of jobs, maybe even from other similar academic backgrounds? What do we have that we can sell that others don't?
Because the question was, what is that we have that we can sell as cognitive psychologists to be competitive for industry positions?
It depends on the job. That's, the most important thing. The skills that you have, it's like Robert was saying before. You have to look at the job description and, play up the relevant skills in that particular setting. The fact that you are, data analysis, definitely. That's not going to set you apart from any other PhDs in other fields, because presumably, unless like English literature or whatever, like most PhDs have to do some data analysis and things like that. But the things that are unique to cognitive psychologists that you should play up are really going to vary depending on the field. Did you have something in mind? No. Well, in the case of marketing, it really is experimental design, running experiments, data analysis. I've had to sort of tell stories about how I understand how people's minds work and things like that. I wouldn't put that on your resume, but in an interview with somebody from HR, sometimes you need to talk about things like that. It's more directly applicable, I think, in your field, because you sort of seek cognitive psychologists directly.
I think ultimately you want to be a chameleon. you kind of throw the question back at them. What is it? What is it that you need me to have to be able to do? And then the job description tells you that, and then whatever the job description tells you, that's what it is that you can do miraculously. So you tailor your resume and your application and your entire spin, your whole persona that you present is not necessarily you, especially not your academic you, but something that you reinvent for every single interview that you go into.
So if you study, recognition or something like that, I could then tell a story about how I'm, skilled at designing particularly, I wouldn't say salient stimuli, but, I have experience in making visually appealing, eye-catching collateral that will be, attractive, that people will remember for later or something like that. So it's just taking what you've got and repackaging it into what they want.
Yes, up front.
I'm currently a PhD student, but I'm planning on dropping out.
Oh.
I'm just wondering, is there a difference in the type of work that master's degree students or people who are looking for work? Is it different compared to people who hold PhDs, or maybe aside from like specialty in terms of what someone studied is being applied to work directly? Is there something that's different in the kind of work that people with masters versus PhD students?
So the question was, is there a difference in the type of work that someone who graduates with a master's would do versus someone who graduates with a PhD might do in the private sector?
So, I hate that we keep saying this, but it totally depends. This is the thing about the non-academic world. There are so many possibilities, and I think there are a lot more straight answers in academia, and there are more straight answers when you're getting industry specific. There's no job I've looked at that requires a PhD, not a one, right?
Ours does, just by the way.
Right, but
we don't hire masters. It's all right.
In his field,
Maybe don't drop out.
yeah, in his field, there are. So it depends what you want to look at. The startup that I worked at, there were engineers and marketing, and all different kinds of people, and nobody had a PhD. All smart people who had just taken different, career paths. So I think it really depends. I do think that you'll be limited if you want to do something like that, but there's no reason why you couldn't get a job at a consulting firm. My husband is a principal at a big consulting firm, and he's also a dropout from economics and political science dual PhD program, and he has a master's, and he's a consultant now. So there's lots of things you can do with a master's degree.
I think you end up doing more of the hardcore stuff if you're a PhD. Like GE would hire you to do hardcore, whatever, the airplane cockpit design. And you get to do more of the fun stuff, like the colorful stuff if you're not a PhD, like the, designing fancy schmancy websites and making them appealing. And yes, sorry, in the back.
Can you discuss recommendation or references or how it works in this area? Is that only familiar with the academic? Who you would ask or who you don't ask, how many? How that works?
The question is, how do letters of recommendation work in the private sector?
Sure. So the thing about jobs is that usually when you're looking for a job, you don't want your current employer to know that you're looking for a job, right? So there's no expectation that you will have a letter of there are no letters of recommendation. It's just references, and there's no expectation that you would put your current employer as a reference. When I was first looking for jobs, I put the professors who I worked with as my references, but they knew that I was leaving already at that point. So this is a case where it depends. So if you've been open with people about what your intentions are, put your mentor, put your colleagues, because they know you well and can speak to your assets. If you don't have that option, though, there are plenty of other people, presumably, in your network who can speak to. Don't do it as no friends, that's not okay, but anyone you've worked with in a professional context, maybe they're not, directly in your lab, but somebody you've collaborated with on something, somebody who's not in that direct network who you're trying to kind of keep this secret from. But really, put yourself in the employer's shoes. Why are they going to speak to this reference? 9 times out of 10, they don't call them. They will call them. Don't assume they won't, but a lot of times they don't even end up calling them. And if they do, Anthony Wagner, who I worked in his lab like 9 years ago at this point. When I started working at the startup, they called him. He was still a reference for me at that point in my career. And they called him, and he said, yeah, she's great with data. She's a great, organizer. She's a great manager. So use someone from your past if you can't use someone from your present. But don't worry about it too much.
References are just a confirmatory step, so pretty much companies have already decided that they want to hire you, and they just want to find out, I don't know, have you killed someone? And so I put on my resume, I put references provided upon request, and if they ask for them, I'll provide them. And I'm pretty sure for some of the positions I've received offers for, they never even called my references. And they're also kind of limited by law as to what they can ask. It's not a free-for-all. They can ask a very limited set of questions, like would you hire, if it's a previous employer, would you hire this person again? They can't go into detail about your job performance. And which, just by the way, if you're in an interview, you cannot be asked about your national origin, your race, your gender. They'll try to get that information out of you. They can ask you, are you authorized to work in the U.S.? That they can ask you, and that's a fair question. Are you willing to relocate? That's a fair question, because why are we even talking about this job if you have to move to Alaska and you're in California and there's no way 20 horses would drag you to Alaska? So that'd be a waste of time. But the married and family thing, they'll try to get around by, are you free to travel 50% of your time? Which is another fair question, because if that's what the job entails and you can't, then why are we even talking? Just as an aside, by the way, salaries, same thing. People worry about salary negotiations. Employers might ask you in an interview, what's your salary range? And people freak out because it's kind of an urban legend that if the person who names a number first loses. And I've actually been in that situation where the company after said, oh, phew, we thought we were going to, and it was literally, $150,000 over what I was volunteering, and I was like, that was on the table? Are you kidding me? So that can happen to you too, but I think it's rare that there's that much of a discrepancy. But usually they just want to know, they're not playing games, they're not out to trick you, they just want to know, are we at least in the ballpark? If you're looking for $200,000 and we're offering $40,000, why are we going through this 3-month interview process if in the end you're just going to laugh at our offer and reject us?
But which is really frustrating because, why don't they just tell you that it's $40,000 in the first place? Well, because then they lose if they could get away with offering you $35,000 or whatever it is. But
there are things you can do, like say, oh, I didn't realize you were prepared to make me an offer yet.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Or compensation is really a multifaceted issue for me. I take into consideration location, job satisfaction, vacation time, all sorts of benefits. So it really doesn't come down to that one number for me.
Or they'll ask you what you're currently making.
Right, which I'm actually not authorized to say because it's confidential. And we will call in the judge if I'm in deposition and say, okay, if I get a court order, then under protection of confidentiality in my deposition, will I reveal it? Otherwise, no. I'm going to fight this tooth and nail.
Well, that's a little intense, but I usually just I try to avoid answering the question in other ways, but you can say that.
I think we have time for one last question.
Well, I guess the one I thought blew me down. I have a question about failure. Specifically, we know that the academic job market is really competitive. A lot of us, aspire to be these research professor at Harvard University and not an adjunct who works at 3 universities and makes $20,000 a year and is very sad. Is it more or less competitive, or maybe it depends, but is it more or less competitive in the industry than in academia? Am I going to be sad and eating ramen noodles while I search for jobs as opposed to as an adjunct professor or an instructor or something?
The question is he going to be sad because he's a failure? How competitive is the private sector versus academia, where it's very competitive, as we all know? I read a statistic once that, one of the top 5 consulting companies, McKinsey, I read once that they get 10,000 applications per day. But there's really a way of stacking the odds in your favor. You're assuming no prior odds, right? You're not thinking in a Bayesian way. You're thinking, I'm just finding this naively finding this job posting and applying to it and sending it off in good hopes into the internet, and thinking that someone's going to read it and be just wowed, and their jaw's going to drop, and they're going to call you and offer you a job. But that's not how it works. I mean, you want to do all the prep work. You want to network and get your name out there and do LinkedIn and tailor your resume and try, like I described, the 3 different approaches just for one job where they weren't responding to my online application. I had to go through the external recruiter and network with the marketing VP and then Google the job description and find who the company was and do some back. I mean, if you do all that, then it's not 1 in 10,000, it's 1 in a couple of hundred maybe.
And there's also just more jobs, right?
Yeah, don't get set on that one. Yeah. Again, it's like dating. I mean, if it doesn't work out between you and some person, I mean, there's more fish in the sea.
I guess that's really what I was getting at, because I feel like with academia there are less fish.
It's a very finite pool. I mean, there are only so many universities and only so many professors, professorships, and those jobs don't turn over. I mean, there's so much more turnover in industry than there is in academia also. So even if you're set on a certain industry that maybe is not super huge, there's just constantly people leaving and moving around.
Yeah, it's like musical chairs. I feel like we're just reshuffling all the people in different positions, and you kind of know the upper echelon after a while, and you're like, oh, hey, they just all switched it up again.
So don't be gloomy.
I think that's all the time we have. I have some brochures here in case someone's interested in Exponent, blowing up stuff, crashing cars. Feel free to take one. There's contact information in there, too.